Hello, welcome back to With Ash was born during Archipelago. So, Ash and Tad would have the battle as Macaco would then use flamethrower, as Sandslash would then try to go for an earthquake, but as it approached, Zartu would then be sent out as it wouldn't have any effect on the flying type. The Zartu would then use a Psychic, which would bash Sandslash everywhere, as the Psychic would then hurt Sandslash for a lot of damage. Sandslash would then use an Iron Tail to shake off the Psychic, as it would then use 2 slashes, which would do a lot of damage, as Zartu would then try to go for a Side Beam, as Sandslash would then use an Iron Tail, which would knock out Zartu. As Daniel would go back into position, as Tab would then send out Poliwrath, as Ash would then send back Sandslash would then send out Cypher. Cypher would then use a wing attack, but before it could hit, would instantly be frozen by an Ice Beam, as it would be knocked out. Ash would then send out Electabuzz, who would hit a Thunder Punch which would paralyze Poliwrath, as it would then be electrocuted by a Thunderbolt. As Tab would then send out Donphan, who would immediately use an Earthquake, which would knock out Electabuzz. Donphan would then face Ash's Gloom, as Gloom would use Raise Leaf, which would do a lot of damage, as would then respond with Fire Fang, which would do a lot of damage to Gloom, as Gloom would then charge up a Solar Beam, as Donphan charged in with a Fire Fang, as Donphan was overwhelmed by the Solar Beam. Tad would then send out his Victory Bell, as Victory Bell would then use Slam, which would knock down Gloom for a lot of damage, as Gloom would then use Sludge Bomb for a lot of damage, as Victory Bell would then use a Sludge for a lot of damage. We would then see a clash between Double Edge and Poison Jab. This clash would go on for a while, but eventually they would both stalemate each other, as they would then clash with Solar Beam. Both Pokemon using equally powerful moves, but eventually Gloom would overwhelm Vileplume and knock it out. Tab would then send out one of his stronger Pokemon, which was Sneasel. Sneasel would then go for an Ice Punch, which would instantly knock out Gloom, as Sandslash, wanting its revenge against Sneasel for it done to it, would send out Sandslash. Actually no, Sandslash would step into battle even if Ash didn't want to. Ash, understanding that Sandslash wanted its revenge, would let Sandslash battle, as we then see a clash between Slash and Night Slash. This was going for a while, but eventually both Pokemon would knock each other back, as we then see Sneasel use an Ice Beam, which would be slashed away by Sandslash. Sandslash would then use a full power slash with Sneasel, which would do a decent chunk of damage. Sneasel would then use an Icy Wind, which would slow down Sandslash. Sandslash would then stand its ground, as it had taken a lot of damage, as it would then get nailed right in the face with an Ice Punch, which would knock it down for a lot of damage. Sandslash would then stand up, not wanting to lose to Sneasel once again, as the Quick Claw would then show itself from beneath Sandslash's pikes, as it would then begin to glow. Ash would immediately know what was going on, and it would begin to glow more vigorously, as Sandslash's eyes would then be enveloped in a pink glow, as pink would surround Sandslash, as Sneasel would try Cheap Shot Sandslash once again, but this time Sandslash's anger from losing in such a cheap manner would be inside the force of the transformation, as it would then blast back Sneasel, as the true transformation would begin, as its pikes would get bigger as it would grow in size, as its claws would get even longer, as Sandslash would undergo primal reversion. Yes, this new transformation Sandslash has is primal reversion if you didn't realize. But Ash wouldn't really know that it's primal reversion. So I'm going to refer to this new transformation as Primal Sandslash, as Primal Sandslash would be complete. I know that Primal Reversion is saved for Groudon and Kyogre, but I thought it would be cool giving Sandslash, the power of its ancestor and able to transform into its ancestor. I thought it would be very cool, as that having part of Sandslash's ancestor's claw would be able to give Sandslash the ability to revert back into how its ancestors used to look and give Sandslash the power that its ancestors used to have, as the ancestor Sandslash on Pinken Island were very feared all over the Orange Archipelago. So yeah, I just thought it would be a cool idea, as Primal Sandslash would tear down Sneasel with a bloodlust in its eyes. As even though Sandslash wasn't in control of its primal reversion form, there was still a little part of Sandslash that was angry that it lost to Sneasel in such a cheap manner, and the ancestor had that anger still inside, even though it had transformed. As Sandslash would then use a slash, which would immediately cut up and bruise Sneasel very badly. As Sneasel would then try to go for an ice beam, which would be slashed away with relative ease, as Sandslash would then go for an earthquake, which would knock out Sneasel. The reason why Earthquake is so powerful is because of the ability of Primal Sandslash, which I like to call Tremors. This ability is essentially, the ability is called Tremoring Earth. Not the best name, but the reason why it has this ability is so it makes ground type moves like Earthquake, Fissure, and Bulldoze much more powerful, and makes Fissure 100% able to hit, and it also makes sure that flying types are hit by the Earthquake unless the flying types are flying, and that it does super effective damage to flying types, so it's a very overpowered ability. So yeah, as Sneasel would then be knocked out, and the anger would envelop Primal Sandslash so much it would try and launch itself at Sneasel, even though normal Sandslash wouldn't try essentially kill a Pokemon that is already down. Sandslash in its primal form will go for it, as it had reverted to its primal behavior and didn't have any restraint, and was essentially acting like a wild animal that was angry. So Ash would stand in the way, as the slash wasn't only going to hurt Sneasel but his childhood friend and rival Tad, so he would jump in the way and take the full brunt of the attack. This would go on for a long while, as Ash would get mauled by his own starter Pokemon. But Ash would survive it, as he would be bleeding everywhere and there would be scratches, but he would say, "Buddy, this isn't you. Please calm down." Sandslash would hear its trainer's voice, as it would then stop slashing and revert into its normal state. As Sandslash would then apologize to Ash in Pokemon Talk, as Tad would ask if Ash was ready for battle, as Ash, without saying a word, would stand back in his place in the battlefield with Sandslash, and Tad already knew what this meant, as he would then send out Magcargo. Magcargo would then use a Will-O-Wisp, which would burn Sandslash a lot. Sandslash would then use Earthquake to do super effective damage, but because it was burnt and Earthquake is considered a physical move, it wouldn't quite knock out Magcargo, even though it still did a lot of damage. As Makago would then go for a Fire Blast, which would do a lot of damage, as Sandslash would barely be left standing, as Sneasel's Ice-type moves still did a lot of damage to it. As Sandslash would then go for a Dig, as it would hit Makago for a lot of damage, but the burn damage would still prevent it from knocking out Makago, as it would then be hit by a Flamethrower from Makago, which would then knock it back into the burrow it had dug, as it would then jump up through the burrow and use an Iron Tail, which would lower the defense of Makago, as then Makago would go for a Rock Slide, which would knock down Sandslash. And I'd also like to add that the lowering of defense essentially put the attack back on the same level that it was normally, as the defense was lowered. So the burn would affect Sandslash, but then still stand back up, not wanting to lose the Battle Force trainer once again. And I'd also like to say that after Makago's loss in their last battle, Tad had trained it and made it his strongest Pokemon right in front of Sneasel, as both Pokemon would then hit each other with Fire Blast and Earthquake respectively, as even though Sandslash was wounded and bruised everywhere, it was Makago who was ultimately the one to fall. As Tad would then throw a bunch of healing supplies towards Ash, which were both for humans and Pokemon, and Ash would essentially clean himself up and heal the wounds, and he would heal all of his team up. Ash would then ask where Tad got all of this stuff from, and Tad would say that he was originally going to use all that medicine for himself and his Pokemon because he thought that he was going to beat Ash. But after he lost to Ash, he realized that sending Ash against Drake with such a beaten up team, and Ash in that condition, would just be sabotaging Ash unfairly. As then Sandslash would then come with Ash and Sentra into the Pomelo Stadium, as then they would meet Drake, as Sentra would then stand in the seat, and he wouldn't stand, he would go sit in the seats for the spectators, as Drake would then say that after his loss to Lorelei, aka Prima, he thought that as a champion of at least an archipelago, he should be a lot stronger, because every other champion of every other place in the Pokemon world easily defeats Elite Four members, as he thought that even though he's a champion of just a group of islands, he should be a lot stronger than that, and that the people around him told him that he should also train. So he's been training intensely so that he can become on the level of other champions. So Ash would then say that he always knew that this wasn't going to be an easy battle, but now that Drake says that, he's even more excited, as Drake would then be confused, as he said that any other person would be a bit terrified to battle Drake now that he's stronger, but Ash would then say that he's not like everybody else and that he's always ready for a challenge, as Drake would then say that he likes that attitude, as then they would go into a battle. Ash would start off with Dugong, as Drake would then start off with his Electabuzz, as Ash would then switch in Rapidash. Rapidash would then take a Thunder Punch, as it would then be knocked back and use a Flamethrower to do a lot of damage, as both Pokemon then clash with Flame Charge and Wild Charge respectively to knock back each other for a decent chunk of damage. as the flame charge would have given Rapidash a speed boost and Electabuzz would have taken recoil damage. This would allow Rapidash to land a flamethrower rather quickly, as before it would land, at the last second Electabuzz would manage to knock back the flamethrower or Thunder Punch, as both Pokemon would then hit each other with a barrage of Thunder Punches and Fury attacks respectively, as this will go on for a long while, as they knock back each other for a lot of damage, as we then see a clash between Thunderbolt and Flamethrower, as this would then cause a massive orange explosion, as in the aftermath of the explosion we would see that both Pokemon are out, as Ash would then send out Electabuzz, as Drake would then send out his Onix. If Drake could have evolved his Onix, he would have, but he didn't have access to a metal coat, so he kept it in Onix. Ash would then say that Ash has an Electabuzz of his own, and that he wished that Electabuzz battled against Ash's Electabuzz, but he guesses that he can make up for that with battling against Onix, who has a type advantage against Electabuzz. As Ash would then say that type advantages don't mean everything in the battle, and that Electabuzz might surprise him. As Electabuzz would then go for a Brick Break, which would knock down Onix for a lot of damage, as Onix would then barrage it with a Rock Slide, which would knock it down, as it would then take an Earthquake, which would knock out Electabuzz. As Drake would then say that Electabuzz hasn't given him much surprises, as a lot of trainers come in with Pokemon and fighting type moves. As then Ash would say that he's still gonna win, and that he still has a bunch of other strong Pokemon that will defeat Onix. This would then send out Plume, which would use a Razor Leaf, which would instantly knock out Onix. As Drake would then say that he expected Ash to go for Bloom, and that Onix wanted to stay in the battle, so he didn't switch it. As he would then send out a Ditto, as Ditto would then immediately transform into Gloom, as Gloom would then use a Razor Leaf, which would do a decent chunk of damage, as it would then be hit by Sludge Bomb for a lot of damage, as they both hit each other with a Solar Beam, as both moves would clash, but eventually they would both stalemate, as they both hit each other with Sludge Bomb, as they knock each other back even more, as they both hit each other with Razor Leaf, as eventually both would be knocked out, as Ash would then send out Dugong to go up against Venusaur, as Drake would then say that Venusaur is one of his stronger Pokemon, and that he's not sure if Dugong will be able to win. And Ash would say that Dugong is definitely going to take this one. As Drake would then say, enough talk, let's get into the battle. As Dugong would then go for an Icy Wind, as Venusaur would take it surprisingly well and respond with a Razor Leaf, as we then see Venusaur hit it with an Ice Beam, as Venusaur would actually avoid it last second and use Sludge Bomb, which would knock back Dugong, as Dugong would then go for Bubble Beam, which would slow down Venusaur, as we then see a clash between Ice Beam and Solar Beam, as both moves would then cause an explosion, as both Pokemon were knocked out, as then both trainers would then send out Cypher and Gengar respectively, as it was obvious that Drake was the stronger trainer, or at least that's how it seemed, but Ash was still able to hold his own, as his pure unpredictability and strategy was helping him go along in the fight, as Cypher would then use a wing attack, which would do a lot of damage to Gengar, as Gengar would then go for Shadow Ball, as we then see a clash between Air Slash and Nightshade, and eventually this will cause a massive explosion, which will be taken advantage of by Ash and Cypher, as we would then use an X Scissor, which would knock out Gengar, as we would then see Drake send out his strongest Pokemon, Dragonite, as then this would be broadcasted all over the Orange Islands and also broadcasted all over the world, as Drake wanted everybody to see his triumphant return and comeback to make the world see how strong he was and how strong the Orange Islands really were. So people all over the world were watching this, including champions from different reasons other than Lance, as there's a reason why Lance isn't watching this that we'll get into later, as Cypher would then try to use a slash, but Dragonite would stand there not even phased. There wasn't a single scratch on its body. It was like its scales were made of titanium, as Dragonite would then use a Thunder point blank on Cypher, which would instantly knock it out, as Ash would then send out Sand Slash to combat the almighty Dragonite, as Sand Slash would then go for an Iron Tail, which would barely do anything to Dragonite, as Dragonite would then use a Water Gun, which would knock down Sand Slash. Guys, remember, this is the Dragonite with 10 moves. The only reason why Ash won in the original timeline was because Charizard, who had a lot of untapped potential, was able to land a few good hits, a few lucky good hits, and Pikachu was able to get off a Thunder after Charizard had landed a few lucky good hits. If Charizard didn't get those hits in, we all know that Ash would have lost to Drake. So yeah. Anyway, Sand Slash would be knocked down, as it would then be blasted with a point blank Hyper Beam, as it would then be bruised everywhere. Drake would think that the battle was pretty much over, as he would then tell Ash to forfeit Sand Slash, as this is torture, forcing Sand Slash to battle against Dragonite. But Sand Slash wasn't over yet, as then the Quick Claw would begin to glow as its transformation would commence. The pink energy would surround it once again, as its eyes would glow pink, as it would then grow in size, as its spikes would elongate, as its claws would elongate, as eventually it would revert back into primal Sand Slash, as it would then use 2 slashes on Dragonite, which would actually do a decent chunk of damage. Dragonite and Drake couldn't believe that this had just happened, but Drake, who had studied the history of the Hoenn region as a champion, knew about primal version, as he would then keep quiet, as he would call for an Ice Beam, which would do a lot of damage but it wouldn't freeze Sand Slash, as Sand Slash would then go for an Earthquake, which would do a lot of damage. Like I said earlier about its ability, the ability allows it to hit ground type moves, hit flying types of ground type moves, and Sand Slash wasn't listening to Ash at all. All these moves were Sand Slash just going wild and doing its own thing, as Ash was shocked, and he was trying to get Sand Slash to listen, but all Sand Slash did was just keep its back turned and keep moving forward and attacking, as Dragonite would then bow its head as its defense would rise, as it would use a skull bash to knock back Sound Slash. Ash would try to call for a slash, but instead Sound Slash would then use an Iron Tail, which would knock back Dragonite for a lot of damage. As Ash would try ask for a dig, but Sound Slash would then launch at Dragonite. But before it could quite get there, it would be hit by a Dragon Rage to knock it back for a lot of damage. As we would then see a Hyper Beam and an Earthquake hit both Pokemon. As after a while we'd see both Pokemon panting heavily as they're both taking a lot of damage. But both would faint. As the referee would then reveal himself, as he would then say from all of the things that he's seen so far in the battle, he thinks that Drake should win the battle. But just as he said that, Sound Slash would stand up, as then the referee would be dumbfounded, as he would then say that that his result is the real result, as he's made a decision. But Drake would say that he won fair and square. That Ash won fair and square, and that it's Ash's victory, as Sound Slash is still able to fight. As the referee would try and argue his case, saying that Sound Slash couldn't even listen to its own trainer's commands. But Ash would then argue and say that it wasn't the referee who went through all the hard training to get both Pokemon here, and that if anything, Drake, the champion of the entire archipelago, is the one with the biggest say. As the referee would then realize his place and keep quiet, as Drake would then say that Ash is the official champion of the Orange Islands from now on, as both trainers would then shake hands. As Lance would then fly all the way here on his Dragonite, as would then show up, as would then say if Drake is ready to officially make the Orange Islands independent from Kanto and accepted as its own independent region, who is apart from Kanto and Johto. As Ash wouldn't know what was going on, as I think it's time we end here.